What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Dr. Vincent Esposito, and today we're going to be talking about why I choose organic foods as much as possible. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. I'm coming out with videos twice a week, everything nutrition, health, wellness, longevity, and plant-based recipes. So if you're interested in any of that, please subscribe down below. Hopefully you find something interesting or helpful for you. So the reason I choose organic foods as often as possible is because they don't contain any additives, added hormones, antibiotics, or any sort of genetic modification, any synthetic fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides. And again, we are kind of what we eat and what we can digest, so I want to be consuming as few of these as possible, and that's really one of the major reasons why I choose organic produce more often than not. And another reason why I choose organic really as often as possible is it's kind of interesting. In the medical literature, they're often they tend to bash organic produce and organic foods a lot, which is kind of ironic considering only about 100 years or so ago, everything that we ate was organic. There was none of these kind of fertilizers, pesticides, things like that really ever used. So it's kind of interesting how what's considered conventional food now was not exactly conventional for our species for most of our lifetime as a species. Now, I think one of the points that are used a lot in saying that organic produce doesn't necessarily mean much is that those who consume organic produce more regularly are not do not have the harmful habits that others have. They're not smoking, they're exercising, they are generally getting enough sleep and take care of themselves a little bit better than compared to others, at least in the studies that I've found. And this seems to be one of the major reasons why they think that organic might not necessarily matter. It's the other lifestyle factors. So, while obviously lifestyle factors are important, there are reasons why you should choose organic produce, and I'm just going to go over a couple of things here. So one population study found here in the United States that there was a 50 to 70% increase in the prevalence of ADHD in those children who had higher levels of pesticides in their urine compared to kids who did not. Another study done on American men found that those who had higher levels of pesticides in their urine were 3 times as likely to develop testicular cancer than to those who had lower or no levels of pesticides. Another 2010 French study found that organic produce had higher vitamin and mineral content, particularly in things like iron and magnesium, were greater than those that were raised conventionally. Additionally, they also found in animal products that the fatty acid profiles of organically and pasture-fed animals were much more beneficial to our health because they contained more polyunsaturated fatty acids than those raised conventionally. In other words, they had less of that marbling and that saturated fat compared to conventionally raised animals. Another key factor to consider with organic produce is they tend to have higher amounts of phenols and phytonutrients, which possess more antioxidant and anti-mutagenic capabilities compared to conventional produce. And the important thing about these phenols and these phytonutrients is that they go beyond the simple antioxidants that we know, say like vitamins A, C, and E, and zinc and selenium. They are in smaller amounts and not as widely known about. And really the only places we get them are from our produce. And the fact that there are more than in organic produce is really beneficial for our health because it's not necessarily something we're going to get from supplements or things like that. These are only things that you're going to get from whole foods. It also turns out that where our food is grown can have a dramatic impact on the nutrient content of the foods grown in said soil. For example, some studies have tested some conventional soils along with some organic produce soils, and then compared that to the nutrient content of the fruits and vegetables grown in those farms. For example, the organic cabbage used in this study contained 94 parts per million of iron, while that number dropped to 0 in the fertilized soil. In that same study, they also tested tomatoes, and the organic tomatoes contained over 1,900 parts per million of iron when grown in the organic soil, and that number got reduced to 1 part per million once it was raised in the conventional soil. So as you can see, these mineral contents could be affected too, depending on the soil they are grown in. And like I said earlier, along with the nutrient depletions, the pesticides can become a big issue as well. For example, there was a study that followed 39 2 to 4 year olds done at the University of Washington. They found that the young children that consumed conventionally raised produce contained 6 times more pesticides in their urine compared to the children who were eating organically raised produce. So these are a couple of the reasons that I choose organic produce more so than conventionally raised. In fact, I choose organic as often as I can. Now, one of the big questions I get after this is usually, well, what if I can't afford it? Well, good news is there's some resources out there that can help you. First off, one of the big ones is the Environmental Working Group, EWG. If you go to their website, ewg.org, you can find a list they put out on an annual basis known as the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And now this list is to help consumers pick and choose which foods they might be able to get conventionally versus organic and which ones are most important to get. Now, the ones on the Dirty Dozen, you're generally going to want to consume organically, especially. Those are the ones you should prioritize, while the ones on the Clean 15, they're more okay if you had to pick between organic and conventional. Those could be the ones you could choose to eat conventionally if you're on a budget. Now, this list does change year to year, so I would check their website annually and just kind of see when it comes out. But as a general rule, if fruit or vegetable has a thicker skin and you don't eat the skin, so things like, say, pineapples or avocados or something like that, those tend to be on the Clean 15 more often than those with thinner skins, say foods like berries. Another thing to consider when you go shopping is if you stick into the produce section, you tend to not spend as much money even if you're choosing all organic foods. What I tend to notice is more expensive is when you go into the snack aisles or the prepared food aisles. Those tend to be where the higher price margins are found. So if you're sticking to conventional produce, yes, it is more expensive, but not to the same extent as, say, an organic bag of chips is versus the conventional and things like that. So that's really something to be aware of when you go shopping, especially if you're on a budget. And like everything else on this channel, most of what I talk about is about whole foods and specifically plant-based foods. And if you're sticking in the produce section for the most part, you're not really gonna get hammered too hard when it comes to your wallet. Another thing to consider here, and I know this might not be the most popular thing to say, but I would also see how much you spend going out for dinner on a week-to-week basis and on a day-to-day basis, and then see how much food you can buy at your farmer's market or your local grocery store in the organic section, and see how much you can get. Now, I know if I go to the supermarket, I can get enough food for at least Monday to Friday for about $100, usually less than that. And I know I could spend $100 very easily one night out, say eating, or 2 nights a week. If I was eating those 2, I could easily go over that. So it's really important to keep that in perspective too. And when we're making that decision over what goes in our bodies, take that into account, because we have a decision to affect our health every time we put something in our mouths. And that's all the information we have for today. So I hope you found this helpful, or at least put something in perspective for you. Again, I know this is a very hot topic, so I'm sure there's gonna be people who disagree with what I'm saying, but I'm happy to have a productive conversation down in the comments. So if you have any questions or concerns, let's meet down there and talk. I'm happy to chat. But until then, if you happen to like this, please like and subscribe. Really appreciate any support, because we're doing everything: nutrition, health, wellness, longevity, and plant-based recipes. So if you're interested in any of that, it's coming out twice a week. And until next time, take care.